The tech world just witnessed something unprecedented. Apple partnering with a Chinese company for AI, while Elon Musk threatens to abandon OpenAI. It's like watching two completely different playbooks for handling artificial intelligence unfold simultaneously.
That's such an interesting contrast you're highlighting there. You know what fascinates me most about Apple's move? They're essentially admitting they need local expertise to crack the Chinese market.
Exactly right. And when you look at the numbers, it makes perfect sense. We're talking about 17% of Apple's total revenue coming from Greater China. That's billions of dollars at stake. And they've been watching those iPhone sales numbers trend in the wrong direction.
So, what do you think pushed them to make this move now? The timing seems particularly significant.
You know what blows my mind? Apple just made this massive strategic pivot in China by partnering with Alibaba for AI, while their biggest competitor in the AI space is literally fighting itself. Let me explain why this matters.
That's fascinating timing, especially considering Apple's recent challenges in the Chinese market. What exactly prompted this move?
Well, here's the thing. Apple's been watching their iPhone sales slip in China, which is a huge deal, since we're talking about 17% of their total revenue. They basically had to do something dramatic.
So they're essentially admitting they need local expertise to compete in the Chinese AI space?
That's exactly right. And what's really interesting is how this connects to the bigger picture of AI transformation happening globally. The World Economic Forum just dropped some mind-bending numbers about this.
Tell me more about those numbers. What are we looking at exactly?
Well, they're projecting 92 million jobs will disappear by 2025. But here's the twist. They're also predicting 170 million new jobs will be created. That's a net gain of 78 million jobs that literally don't exist yet.
That's wild when you think about it. What kinds of jobs are we talking about here?
So get this. We're seeing entirely new categories emerge. AI trainers, ethics specialists, deepfake detection experts. Jobs that would have sounded like science fiction just 5 years ago.
You know what this reminds me of? The whole Industrial Revolution parallel, when machines replaced hand weavers but created entirely new industries.
Exactly. And speaking of revolutionary changes, let's talk about what Elon Musk is doing. While everyone's focused on his OpenAI drama, he's actually working on something even more fascinating underground. Literally.
Oh, right. The Boring Company. But how does that connect to all this AI transformation we're seeing?
Well, it's all about solving problems in unexpected ways. While everyone's dreaming about flying cars, Musk is thinking about 3D networks of tunnels. He's basically saying we're looking at the wrong dimension for solutions.
That's such an interesting perspective. Looking down instead of up. How fast are these tunnels supposed to be?
They're designed for speeds up to 200 kilometers per hour, which means you could get from Westwood to LAX in just 5 to 6 minutes. But here's what's really fascinating. The cost reduction strategy.
Let me guess. It involves AI and automation?
Precisely. Current tunneling costs are around $1 billion per mile, but Musk's team is using AI and automation to aim for a tenfold improvement. They're completely rethinking the process.
That's incredible. But let's circle back to Apple for a moment. How does their AI partnership in China fit into this bigger picture of technological transformation?
So here's where it gets really interesting. Apple's not just trying to sell more phones. They're positioning themselves for the next wave of AI innovation. Think about it. They need local AI expertise to compete with Chinese tech giants.
And I imagine the regulatory environment plays a huge role in this decision too?
Absolutely crucial. Chinese regulations around AI and data are completely different from the West. This partnership with Alibaba gives Apple a local guide through that maze.
That's fascinating how all these pieces connect, from job transformation to infrastructure to international tech partnerships.
And you know what's really wild? The World Economic Forum suggests that the jobs being created aren't just technical roles. They're seeing huge growth in what they call human-centered positions.
What exactly do they mean by human-centered positions?
Think roles that require emotional intelligence, creativity, and cultural understanding. Things AI still struggles with, like experienced designers, AI ethics consultants, and human AI interaction specialists.
That's actually quite hopeful, isn't it? It suggests there's still a very human element to our technological future.
Exactly. And it brings us back to why Apple's move in China is so smart. They're not just implementing AI, they're trying to understand how it fits into Chinese culture and society.
You know, when you put it all together like this, it really shows how interconnected everything is. From infrastructure to AI to cultural understanding.
And that's really the key takeaway here. Whether we're talking about Apple's strategic moves, Musk's tunnels, or the changing job market, it's all about adapting to change while keeping human needs at the center.
That's such a powerful way to look at it. It's not just about the technology itself, but how we integrate it into our lives and societies.
Looking ahead, I think we're going to see more of these surprising partnerships and unexpected solutions. The companies that succeed won't just be the ones with the best technology. They'll be the ones who best understand how to make that technology work for humans.
Well, this has certainly given me a lot to think about. It's amazing how what seemed like separate stories actually tell one bigger narrative about our future.
And that's exactly why we need to keep having these conversations. The future isn't just happening to us. We're actively shaping it through these decisions and adaptations. You know what's mind-blowing? Elon Musk just revealed that it would take exactly 100 massive factories to completely transition Earth away from fossil fuels. And he's already building them.
That's such a concrete way of thinking about what seems like an impossible challenge. Breaking it down into actual infrastructure we can count.
And what's fascinating is how he approaches these massive problems like puzzles to be solved. Take his new tunneling project. He looked at conventional tunnel boring and said, "We can make this 10 times cheaper by just changing two things."
The engineering mindset really comes through. Instead of accepting that tunnels are expensive, he breaks down exactly why. The diameter and the stop-start nature of current machines.
Speaking of breaking things down, let's talk about his vision for autonomous vehicles. He's predicting cross-country self-driving trips by the end of this year.
That timeline seems incredibly ambitious, even by his standards. Though I'm curious about how he approaches the safety aspect.
Well, he made an interesting point about that. It's not enough for self-driving to be 99.9% safe. People need to feel confident enough to actually fall asleep in the car.
Right. And he said you'd need it to be safe enough that you wouldn't crash in 1,000 lifetimes. That's quite a benchmark.
The implications are huge, though. Once cars can truly drive themselves, he envisions them earning money for their owners by providing rides when not in use.
That would completely transform how we think about car ownership, wouldn't it? Your car becomes an asset that generates income rather than just sitting in a parking lot all day.
And it ties into his broader vision for sustainable transport. The Tesla semi-truck announcement was particularly interesting. He claims it can out-torque any diesel truck uphill.
The way he described test driving the prototype was pretty entertaining, making mad maneuvers in this massive electric truck like it was a sports car.
You know what really struck me? His comment about technology not automatically improving. He pointed out how we've actually gone backwards in some areas, like how we can't send people to orbit anymore after the space shuttle retired.
That's a sobering thought. And he used examples from history, too. How the Egyptians forgot how to build pyramids and the Romans forgot their aqueduct technology.
It really emphasizes his point about why we need to actively push technology forward. And speaking of pushing forward, let's talk about his Mars colonization plans. The scale of that new rocket is just staggering.
4 times more powerful than the Saturn V, right? And designed to carry the equivalent of a fully loaded 747 into orbit.
What I find fascinating is how he combines these massive technical challenges with emotional resonance. When asked why Mars matters, he didn't just talk about backup plans for humanity.
No, he talked about having a future that makes you want to wake up in the morning. That line about trying to think about the future and not be sad really hit home.
And it's interesting how he approaches these different challenges. With Tesla, he knew he needed to make electric cars desirable to drive adoption. With solar, he's making beautiful roof tiles that happen to generate power.
So, what do you think about his timeline for all this? He's talking about Mars missions in 8 to 10 years, full autonomy this year, 4 new gigafactories.
Well, he has a track record of achieving things that seemed impossible, even if his timelines sometimes slip. Remember when everyone laughed at the idea of landing and reusing rockets?
And now they've done it 9 times and even reflown one successfully. Though I have to appreciate his self-awareness when he asked people to tell him if he ever starts getting genuinely insane.
That's what makes his vision compelling, though. He's ambitious enough to push boundaries, but practical enough to break these massive challenges into solvable engineering problems.
The combination of idealism and pragmatism is pretty unique. He's not just dreaming about a better future. He's actually building the infrastructure to make it happen.
And that might be the biggest takeaway here. Whether it's sustainable energy, autonomous vehicles, or Mars colonization, it's about creating concrete steps towards seemingly impossible goals.
That's exactly right. He's showing that with enough determination and engineering skill, we can tackle even civilization-scale challenges.
And maybe that's the most inspiring part. The idea that these massive problems aren't insurmountable. They just need to be broken down into the right pieces and attacked systematically.
Though preferably with a sense of humor. I mean, who else would name their tunneling company the Boring Company?
Well, as he showed us today, sometimes the most serious challenges need a light touch. And speaking of serious challenges, we should probably wrap up our own tunneling into this fascinating conversation.
Indeed. Though I have to say the future feels a bit less boring, and definitely less sad, after diving into these ideas.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep today into something that's been generating a lot of buzz lately. AI in education. And more specifically, how it might be a game changer for students who are having a tough time keeping up.
Right. And we've got some really interesting research out of Tasmania that we're going to dig into today.
Exactly. And it all revolves around this thing called the 2 sigma problem. Ever heard of it?
Oh, yeah, it's a classic. It basically comes from the study done back in the 80s by Benjamin Bloom. He was a big name in educational psychology.
Okay.
And he found that students who are lucky enough to get one-on-one tutoring, they ended up performing, get this, like 2 standard deviations higher than kids in a regular classroom.
2 standard deviations.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a big jump.
Huge. I mean, just to give you an idea, a standard deviation is like, it's how much scores are spread out, right? So 2 standard deviations higher, that's a seriously significant difference.
Yeah, that really highlights the power of personalized learning. I mean, imagine if every student could have that kind of focused attention.
Right. It'd be amazing. But the problem is one-on-one tutoring for every student. Not exactly practical in most schools, is it?
Not really. I mean,
Yeah.
think of the resources that would take.
Exactly, and that's where AI comes in. The source material we're looking at today, it really digs into this idea.
Okay, yeah.
So this guy, Paul Matthews, he's a 3rd-generation teacher, by the way, and he's also the CEO of this company called My Teacher Aid. And he's convinced that AI could be the key.
Interesting. So how does he see AI actually working in the classroom? What's his vision?
He lays out these 3 main strategies, And they're surprisingly simple, which is kind of cool.
Simple is good. So what's the first one?
First one is what he calls text differentiation. Think about it. You've got a classroom, high school English class, they're tackling Shakespeare.
Yeah. Tough stuff for a lot of kids.
Exactly. But imagine if the text could be adjusted, like tailored to each student's reading level.
Oh, wow.
So everyone can actually understand what's going on. That's what AI can do. It uses something called natural language processing.
Natural language processing. Sounds complicated.
It's basically AI that can understand and manipulate language, you
Yeah.
know? So it can analyze a text and adjust the complexity without losing the core meaning.
So you could have everyone reading Shakespeare, but at a level that makes sense for them. Pretty
Well,
neat.
it could be a real game changer, especially for those students who might feel like they're falling behind. It really levels the playing field.
Love it. Okay, what about the second strategy? What does Matthews propose there?
Okay, so the second one is all about something called retrieval practice.
Retrieval practice. That rings a bell, but remind me.
It's the idea that if you really want to learn something, like really cement it in your brain, you got to actively try to recall it. Like quiz yourself, you know?
Oh, yeah, I get it.
So instead of teachers spending hours making quizzes and tests, AI can step in, generate tons of questions based on the material the kids are learning.
Makes sense. Frees up teachers to do other things.
Totally. And the cool part is these AI-generated quizzes, they can be personalized. Like each student gets a quiz that's tailored to what they already know and what they still need to work on.
So it's like having a personalized study buddy that constantly tests you and helps you learn, basically.
Pretty much. Keeps them on their toes, helps them focus on what they really need to master. Okay, ready for the third one?
Hit me. Third strategy.
Feedback?
Feedback. Always important. But how does AI fit into that?
Imagine this. Students working on an essay, right?
Yep.
But before they even hand it in to the teacher, they can run it through an AI. Boom, instant feedback. Stuff like, hey, this paragraph needs more work. Your sentence structure could be stronger. And, oh, by the way, make sure you're not accidentally plagiarizing.
Whoa, that's pretty amazing. I mean, that kind of instant feedback could be so valuable.
Absolutely. Students can catch their mistakes and improve their work before it even gets graded.
Okay, so this all sounds really promising, but I have to ask, is it really that simple? Are there any, downsides or challenges we need to be thinking about with all this?
You're right. There are definitely some things to consider. Matthews himself points out two big ones.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, teachers. They need training, right? They got to learn how to use these AI tools effectively. I mean, tech is only as good as the people using it.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't just throw a fancy new tool at someone and expect them to know what to do with it.
Exactly. And the second thing, students. We got to make sure they're using AI the right way.
What do you mean?
It's a tool to help them learn, right? It's not an excuse to avoid doing the work.
Yeah, like a shortcut.
Exactly. They need to understand that AI can make learning easier, it can help them improve, but it's not going to magically do the learning for them.
Makes sense. So it sounds like Matthews isn't saying robots are going to replace teachers anytime soon.
No, not at all. He actually calls AI a tool that can help us do the basics better.
I like that.
It's not about some radical revolution. It's about using tech to do what good teachers have always done, but making it more efficient, more consistent, and more accessible for every single student.
And that's where things get really exciting, right? I mean, if we can achieve that kind of consistent support for all learners,
Yeah.
that has the potential to change everything. A better education system benefits everyone, right? It has ripple effects throughout society.
Couldn't agree more. And it brings us to a really important question. What do you think about AI in education?
Yeah. What do you think?
Could this be the key to unlocking that 2 sigma potential for all students? Not just a lucky few.
It's a huge question and one worth exploring. We want to hear your thoughts, your hopes, your concerns, all of it. Head over to our website. There's a comment section for this episode. Let us know what you think. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
See you next time.